Shall we start from the top?
Yeah, start again. So yeah, just paint for us of the impact of COVID-19 on the music industry and sort of where we're at right now as things are starting to reopen.
Sure. So like I said, the first part of the COVID was just a series of online events and streaming and happy accidents like this. But yeah, now shows are being booked again beginning in September throughout the year. And there's definitely an excitement and an eagerness from promoters and event organizers to get back to some sense of normalcy. And because of that, there's also a ton of contingency plans for all events. So I am currently working on 4 different festivals right now for the fall. And I can't even tell you what they're going to look like exactly. And that's based on, our provincial and municipal governments neglecting to outline a reopening plan. So there's no model right now, no restrictions or regulations. And, it's funny because even this past week, you've seen that they're potentially bumping up the reopening of phase 2. So that, I guess, is the current landscape.
Yeah, I mean, it must be so incredibly frustrating to not have a plan in place for folks, and also costly if thinking about not knowing, what's actually going to be required from these venues first off to be able to open up again. I imagine it's a sort of a stress on folks to not know, even the costly impact of that.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, basically.
Yeah. And we were talking yesterday and you were saying that there were a lot of basically a lot of the kind of the people involved in the music industry here are actually the ones that are pushing forward plans, right? Or proposed plans and saying, okay, well, we need a phased approach. What about this for phase 1? Which, I mean, it should be the other way. It shouldn't be folks that are, working, that are kind of making the plans and pushing them forward, right?
Totally. I mean, yeah, I think that we're all just looking for some sort of answers. Meanwhile, we're still trapped in this bureaucratic mess.
What can you talk maybe a bit about the impact of the pandemic on venue owners and the folks who work in the industry? Do you think, for instance, have they, is that a part of the arts community that you think has fallen through the cracks in terms of support received, for instance?
Yeah, I totally. I think venue owners have been hit by far the hardest. Unlike festivals and events, they're rarely applicable for funding, even in a good year. So that's not to say the entire industry had hard, but we've lost over 11,000 full-time jobs, according to the Toronto Economic Impact Study, and yeah, I mean, venues have associated expenses, even maintaining a space when they're not open for business. So yes, there's been rent relief programs and tax relief as well, but I think there's a statistic that says 70% of venue owners have at least $170,000 of debt right now. And, we went from contributing, I think it's like $800 million to the overall economy in the city, and venues were responsible for $500 million of that. So it's definitely devastating, and I empathize with them, and I miss them.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there is, again, we were talking about this yesterday. I was talking about, one of my best friends, for instance, he goes to shows all the time. And, I mean, I think it is such a big part of, many, I mean, for folks that don't, for instance, subscribe to a specific religion and don't, I think, people have been allowed to kind of worship in the spaces pretty much throughout the pandemic. And I don't think that kind of, music is such a, I don't know, it's such an important part of society. And for many people, it is something that is really important and can be therapeutic. And, it's community and yeah, you go out and kind of support friends and, that I don't think that's been considered. I think personally, I think it's just kind of been looked at as like a business like any other. And I think music is personally so much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, even working in the industry and attending shows, it's a lifestyle. It's not even like it's in addition to being a career. All of my friends and colleagues are because of what I've been doing for the last 20 years. So, especially during lockdowns and isolated times, it's a huge loss not having spaces, community spaces for that.
What about the gig economy? What's been most challenging during this pandemic, do you think? And do you think that there are enough supports in place? If you think about CERB, for instance, was that enough? And is it enough now? Talking about, I know the Liberals are talking about cutting the CRB by $800. Do you think that enough has been done and enough continues to be done?
Um, I mean, it's fun. Well, it's not funny, but yeah, the cuts to the CERB are only really going to directly affect people in the music industry at this point. And I'm sure they're doing that to offset the cost of like servers going back to work, but that does really mainly affect us. But yeah, I would say the main challenges to the DIY community are large the inability to put on shows. Ticket sales are vital to getting industry and artists paid. And an issue I've spoken to some colleagues about recently is surrounding funding opportunities. So at the beginning of COVID, grants were surrounding, or they weren't amended to really reflect sort of the streaming or tech advancements or innovations that you could potentially do. And so, I mean, by large grant funding, organizations are a little antiquated in general. Um, but yeah, I think like SOCAN was offering $100 for artists to put on an online show. So that clearly wasn't going to subsidize any living costs. And then now there's sort of this like first come, first serve sense of urgency with funding where no one knows how long the money's going to last or how long they have to wait to get it. And it's a very short-sighted plan. And a lot of these DIY organizations don't have infrastructure or staff even to really support putting together proposals and business plans. So they're depending on volunteers like usual. And even once they receive the financial funds or the funding support, you have to spend it in this quarter. So you don't know, you have received money to put on an event that you don't even know if it can really happen because we don't have a reopening or infrastructure or regulations to even confirm this, or even a recognition that the events could be a legitimate legal entity in themselves, and you have to spend the money in order to receive it within the next few months. So it's kind of nuts and backwards.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that this is an opportunity to kind of reimagine a different way of funding this industry? That sounds like there were issues with the way it was funded even prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but I think like overhauling funding arts organizations um, isn't going to happen anytime soon. And I don't even know if that's necessarily the focus. I think, and I hate to pat the government on the back too much, but I think some of these, small business grants and government assistance have been more in line with creating a more sustainable model than applying for funding time and time again for the same amount and not being able and being limited by that in terms of your own growth.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, I think we were talking about this yesterday, but you can really see the priorities of a government during the pandemic. Specifically, I'm thinking about the provincial government that, there's no, yeah, it's clear that the base of support for the provincial government isn't in Toronto,
Yeah.
and they don't, that's, I'm sure, one of the reasons why there isn't really a reopening plan in terms of the music industry, because it's not the base of support here. And, it really speaks to who has power in our society in terms of, the film and television industry has virtually stayed open the entire time. because that's where the money is, and that's where people, that's where the industry can afford to have folks to lobby the government. So, I think just like everything really, I mean, the cracks are exposed in our society and who holds power and what's valued.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some contradictions in the way some of these industries have been able to function and in some cases thrive over the last year. And I would say film is definitely one of them. I mean, they've continued production indoors all year. Uh, Whereas, science even dictates outdoor programming is safe, but we're still unable to confirm any outdoor events. Um, and I did notice, I looked it up, but I think there were between 20 and 30 productions during our like serious winter lockdown that were happening all over the city. But I mean, I'm not naive because the film industry is, I think it, is a $2 billion industry in the city. So clearly that would take precedence, but it's, yeah, it's a little hypocritical for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, do you think that there's a very real risk that a lot of these venues won't be coming back, and a lot of folks who worked in that industry have kind of moved on to other jobs? And if so, what what would the city be like without the vibrant music scene that it has had for so many years?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of like servers and venue workers have moved into the film industry at this point. They're all PAs now, and probably making a lot more money. But without music, I mean, it's not a place I would want to live. I mean, I live in this city because I love music and I love, being close to venues and running across the street to the Baby G at any given time to see a show 4 days out of the week. Um, but yeah, I mean, I, I mean, I don't want to be too pessimistic because there have been, I mean, it's a creative industry. So promoters and event organizers have been finding ways to develop new initiatives and create opportunity for artists and also create, moments of beauty and a sense of community, even online and digitally, and are persevering and still committed to creating events in the fall, even though things are so uncertain. Um, I worked with Venus Fest on a mentorship program last fall, a paid mentorship program to develop more industry professionals, and they're doing that again this summer. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I think it is largely the DIY community that's sort of rising to the challenge to create spaces even under restraints. So I don't want to say it's hopeless, but yeah, I mean, it's a tough business regardless. So we're all hustlers at this point.
I'd love to hear your ideas on how we can revive the music scene right now. What do you think needs to happen?
Um, well, where was it? I have some notes. Yeah, I mean, I think even we in our pre-call the other day, there's different initiatives that I've seen sort of popping up over the city, like the Dundas BIA used all of the Dundas West money to invest in those semi-permanent patio fixtures across the city. People don't have to feed buses running them over. So I'd love to see that in other neighborhoods, especially across our riding. Uh, Something similar to Christy Pitts used to have an event series where different promoters could utilize their stage. Something like that in Dufferin Grove would be awesome. Um, what else? I mean, there's different permits available right now for outdoor fitness. If we could have the same leniency for music events, that would be great. Just, small pop-up shows around town. But I am really excited because ultimately it's going to come down to brands wanting to get involved again in live events. And that's really going to start fueling our industry and creating a big influx of cash anyway, and providing a lot more opportunities to be creative. Um, but it's unfortunate that our government doesn't have the same interest or investment or understand how much that's going to resonate with people. But I'm optimistic.
Yeah, and I think again it speaks to, who holds power and what they prioritize. If there were big corporations that were, wanting to support outdoor music spaces, and they, lobbied the different levels of government. I'm sure there would be more willingness to make that happen, which is unfortunate. I, for one, would love, I was mentioning this to you, that I would love to see an outdoor festival at the Bloordale Beach, for instance. I think that that's such a nice space, very open. Yeah, I just, but kind of closed off as well. So I would like to kind of reimagine these spaces, and repurpose them for outdoor music, because I'm not a public health professional, but we've all been told that it's pretty safe to be outside, especially if we've had one vaccination or both. So I would love to see us have outdoor music during the summer for sure. Do you want to maybe just talk a bit about, plug maybe some of the things that we hope will happen this fall anyway, that you're working on, or that other folks are working on, to kind of give us a bit of hope that we'll be able to see some music in the fall?
Sure. As I am a publicist on occasion. The Music Gallery, which is located at 918 Bathurst, is planning a live festival this year for their Ex Avant series. So that should be fun. But like I said, there's contingency plans, so it might have to be digital depending on what happens in the world. Long Winter has 2 festivals coming up, one in September and November, both real life, maybe parking lot oriented. And there's also going to be an international digital stream because they're partnering with promoter in Paris, France. So we're going to have dual screens showing everything going on in both cities. Venus Fest is collaborating, or having artists and musicians collaborate on video content and looking into having a real space to incorporate into that. So there's definitely some things going on. And even like local DIY promoters, like Not Dead Yet has shows scheduled all throughout 2022. Transmit is booking shows at the Baby Jane Garrison and some other venues around town. Holds everywhere, but matter of go or under these conditions. But there's still, lots of cool initiatives online happening throughout the summer, like ISO Radio, which is a community-based digital radio station run by JM Cam and Friesichin, and they're now based at a Stacked, which is great to see. So I'm sure they're going to have some exciting events throughout the summer as well. But there's lots of stuff going on.
Great. I'll get you to sort of send that written, and we can share it afterwards. Sounds like there's a lot of interest in this Bloordale Beach party, so we're gonna have to move that forward somehow.
Your computer, because I want it first.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Oh, is everything okay?
Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone, I know there's a lot of messaging going on in the chat. Does anyone have any questions for Sacha? Calvin's asking, where can I find out what's going on over the summer?
I mean, a lot of it is just following everything on the internet, because I don't think people, or at least summer event promoters, want to tip off any of the local officials too much at this point. So I would just say, if you want to be tapped into some underground fun, let's just keep it a little more low key for now. I don't want to put any summer event planners on blast.
So we're going underground again. Sounds great.
But I would say also, just in terms of the future and what everyone could do if they're excited about shows, is to buy tickets. And also buy tickets when promoters announce their shows, so that they don't have to pull all their hair out and wonder why they're in this business. And just support local artists by buying their music all summer as well. I would recommend Bandcamp for that. And just also encouraging your friends and your family to invest in sort of consumer confidence, so that people feel comfortable going to shows again and spending money at venues.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that to buy tickets right away is helpful.
Yeah, it's terrifying when people don't.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know some kind of switch, some some musicians are making different kind of art as well. So there's also different ways to support musicians as well that are potentially working on some other artistic ventures during this time. Great. Well, thank you, Sacha. It's been really, really great chatting with you. Do you have any kind of last words you wanna say before we go?
I mean, I'm just very sorry about all the technical difficulties and even the writing at this point. This was not ideal, but now we know. You and I should have done a live yesterday.
That's, yeah, that's good. I mean, we're learning every day, and it sounded like people were really enjoying helping us through that. So, yeah.
But all my friends encouraged me to make my audio available.
Great.
But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your interest in the industry.
And thanks to everyone as well for joining. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your rainy Friday. Bye, everyone.
Bye.